The simple subdivision of 4 is of course 8. Let's start off with the basic beating pattern. Here it is. And I'll just slow this down and then introduce a little subdivision on the 4th beat. There we are. 1, 2, 3, 4, and that naturally leads in to the subdivision on the rest of the pattern. So what we've essentially got is just 2 bounces on each corner, with the beat being carried from one beat to another. It's important that the main beats are visible here. If all the beats look the same size, again, it's quite hard to see which is which. But we just take a little lift between. And we've also got the option of the crossover here, if we want more definition. So here we go, coming into the 4th beat, crossover there, use of the wrist, and that naturally brings more definition into the rest of the beat as well. I'm sure you'd like to see that from behind, so let's look at that now. One, 2, 3, 4, and with the crossover, 2, 3, 4, and you'll see that the wrist comes into play here. The musical example we're going to use is the beginning of the Mozart Requiem. And now a few bars further on, and I'll illustrate the crossover beat a little more specifically for more articulation and strength in the sound. The compound subdivision of 4 is 12, and it's built up like this. Here's our basic beating pattern, and we've already looked at 8, which will be this. So you have 2 beats on each corner, and that transfers very easily into the compound subdivision with 3 on each corner. And we need our crossover at the top, Christmas tree shape. 2, 3, 4. I think in this it's important that we make a clear carrying from one part of the beat to another. If all the beats are the same size, it's quite hard to differentiate between them, like this. Whereas if I make bigger transitions between, you get this. To illustrate this, we're going to use the beginning of Stravinsky's Firebird Ballet. The subdivision of 1 is a beat that's rarely used, but it's very useful because sometimes you get music which is not quite in 1 and not quite in 3, and the conductor needs to give a sort of halfway house. Let's see how that works first of all. I'll show it to begin with. Here's our beat of 1 and a bar, no subdivision, and then I'll add a little subdivision just coming from the wrist, then from the forearm, back to the wrist, and out of the subdivision. So we'll see how that's built up. What it involves is a large movement from the upper arm, which gives us the basic pattern, combined with a smaller movement either from the wrist or the forearm. Let's examine the smaller movement first. Here's the movement first of all from the wrist. The rest of the arm is quite still. And I can slowly begin to mobilize the upper arm to give us the feeling of 1 combined with a feeling of 3. Let's look at now the movement of the forearm. There's the movement of the forearm. Obviously the wrist is going to have a bit of give in it, and we retain the contact with the point through the first finger, and gradually the upper arm starts the motion and we get the feeling of 1. Look at this now from the side. So here's our movement of the wrist first of all. Nothing else is going on, and gradually, maybe you can do this exercise yourself. You can just mobilize the upper arm using the left arm to lift it. Let's add the movement of the forearm. Take it out, back to the wrist, and just back to 1 and a bar. So, we're going to see how this works now in the minuet and trio from Mozart's Symphony No. 40. Let's take the whole of the second part of the trio and a few bars on into the minuet so you can compare the beating between the two. Finally, we're going to look at coming out of and going into a subdivision. And for the musical extract, we're going to use a short piece from Debussy's Prelude à l'après-midi d'une faune again. This starts off in 9 and then collapses into 3, then the subdivisions return before it goes into 12.